We live in a society that has an institution called universal suffrage. That is, after long struggles, everyone is entitled to vote. You know, at the early days of the United States, only people with wealth, considerable wealth, were entitled to vote. Women could not vote, poor people could not vote, black and African American people couldn't vote, etc. It took long struggles to get all of that stopped and finally get to the point where everyone who's an adult nearly is allowed to vote, at least in theory. So here's then the simple problem. If you have universal suffrage, as for example, we more or less do in the United States, we do exclude felons in certain parts of the country and so on, and there are debates about that. But in general, we allow nearly everyone to vote. When that's the case, here's the problem for capitalism. The employer class is a small, indeed a tiny minority. The vast majority of us are employees. If the majority rules and we have universal suffrage, then it's always a possibility that we, the majority, the employees, will use the fact that we're the majority to vote for politicians and laws and rules and regulations that favor us. And for example, if we don't like the level of inequality that our society dumps on us, and by the way, poll after poll in this country indicates that Americans overwhelmingly want less inequality than we in fact have. Wow, we could use our majority politically to undo the inequality that capitalism produces and imposes on us. So yes, in all capitalist systems, there's a problem. The minority becomes wealthier and wealthier over time. That's how capitalism works, and it always has. Yet the majority are therefore given an incentive, if you like, over time to do something about the inequality of wealth and income by using their majority position politically. You know who understands this best? The rich. They understand their vulnerability. They understand that's one of the reasons why they weren't so enthusiastic about universal suffrage over the years. It had to be fought for. They know, and they're not passive. They figured out that the only way to be secure in their wealth, given universal suffrage and the risk that the mass of employees will use it to their advantage, the rich understood they have to prevent that. A tiny group of people, the rich, use their money to have an outsized impact on our politics. That's not democracy. Democracy has the idea one person, one vote, that we all have an equal say on the decisions that affect us. We don't. You who go into a voting booth and move the lever and vote for someone, that's a very different level of influence compared to Rockefeller or Bezos. When they want to influence people, they use their money. Jeffrey Bezos purchased the Washington Post. That gives him an influence that you and I can't even dream about. That's not democracy. That's not equal influence, equal access, one person, one vote. That's all thrown aside. And so democracy is not the way we organize the big picture. Capitalism, by concentrating wealth in the hands of a small number of people, contradicts democracy, makes a joke out of democracy. You know what we have? The forms of democracy, but they're paper thin. And the minute you go behind to see how it works, you find Mr. and Ms. Moneybags in control of this situation and using more and more money. If I have my numbers right, the 2020 election saw the expenditure of in excess of $13 billion spent on that election. And that's probably an underestimate. Those 13 billion were not equally contributed by everybody. They were overwhelmingly contributed, as all the documents show, by a tiny core of very rich people and corporations. So no, what was attacked on the Capitol on January 6th was a political regime trying to overthrow another one. A serious question, important, very bad, very scary. But an assault on our democracy, the biggest assault on our democracy is the economic system we do not question enough and that we don't change, because it is the underlying sickness, that system. It undercuts democracy, not just at the workplace, but everywhere else.